Andrea here, and I'm really excited to talk to her. I was actually live with you guys on the KSTS Diaries Facebook page before.
Yes.
And that was really fun. So if you have never seen our Facebook page, I'll link it in the description. It's really cool. Yeah. So I will let you talk a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself.
Sure. So if you don't know me, I'm Andrea Horner. I live here in Kansas. I live on the Kansas. It's very important to be specific because we share states with Kansas and Missouri. But I live on the Kansas side of the Kansas City metro. But I just say I'm from Kansas City. But specifically, I live in Lenexa, which is a suburb in Kansas, in the Kansas side of the metro. So I live in Kansas City. I by day am a pharmacy technician. I work with IVIG therapies, and I work with one of the larger insurance groups, and I work for the pharmacy benefit manager as part of that. And I also do Taekwondo, and so that's my by night I do Taekwondo training. And then I also try and do awareness and some advocacy here locally, and then through Facebook and all that with for Turner syndrome. So I started the KCTS Diaries myself, and then two of the other girls that live in the same area, Amanda and Heidi, joined me, and Brooke has joined us and been on a couple of our broadcasts, and kind of monitoring the page and stuff. So working with her on that. But we did take a little hiatus, but we're working on some stuff and working on coming back. But yes, we have the KCTS Diaries page, and then I wrote a book. It's called Beauty for Ashes, and so that's basic to introduce myself.
Yeah. So, okay. And I knew I was going to say it wrong because I always remember the names wrong. So I knew it was Kansas City, but I said KS instead of KC. Go figure.
A lot of people do. So.
I'm horrible at remembering that stuff. So, okay. I would love to hear your story of getting diagnosed, and are you classic or mosaic?
So interestingly enough, so as far as when I got diagnosed, I was diagnosed at 4 years old. I come from a very tall family, and by tall, most of everybody in my family is 6 feet or taller. My mom is still slightly under 6 foot, but she is fairly tall herself. So I started dropping off the growth curve probably about a year old. So my mom was wondering what was going on about the time I turned a year old. So she spent some time, and at that time we were living in Kansas City. She spent some time taking me to area children's hospitals to get tested. They found nothing wrong. And then one of the things that happened was my adopted, or he would be my adopted dad, my first stepdad at the time, he got a job offer that took us to Houston. And so I was officially diagnosed by the time I hit, when I was 4 years old at Texas Children's, when they actually did the karyotype test, which is one of the few things that they didn't do in Kansas City. So at that time, my mom was given the rundown of all the bad things. She's not going to be able to drive. She won't be able to throw a frisbee. She, is probably going to have to live in a group home because they didn't think I would be independent enough to either live with my parents, or that they thought I'd have to live with my parents or in a group home. And so, and I was diagnosed in the 80s. And so information was even worse back then. And so they thought that I was going to be also mentally delayed, learning delayed. So I was held back a year after my kindergarten year. And so my mom through that whole time was she had a process of blaming herself. Like she was like, what did I do to bring this on to her? And what do I do to help me? And my mom, she decided that she wasn't going to listen to the doctors to a certain extent. She didn't want to just be like, oh, well, she's not going to be able to drive and things like that. She's like, I'm going to work with her um, because I don't think that that's the case. And she spent a lot of time trying to work with me on stuff. And she's like, if I have to get a chair, if I have to get a step stool, if I have to jump in the dryer to change the wash. My mom was going to start getting me to learn how to do things so I could be independent. And so my mom never let me make an excuse like, oh, I'm too short to get the dishes. Get a step stool, bring it over, and figure out how to get some dishes down or put them up. Help me out. So my mom didn't want me to let that be an excuse. And she knew that as I got older, it was going to be difficult, and she wanted me to learn how to be able to advocate for myself and be able to adapt and defend myself. So that's what she did when I first got diagnosed. She was like, she had her time where she grieved and felt bad and was upset and trying to figure out the whole thing. And then she was like, okay, well, I'm going to try and do what I can to um, give her the best possible future. So she made me very independent. So now I'm pretty stubbornly independent. So um, yeah, so that's basically initially when I first got diagnosed. My mom was upset, and she went through all those emotions and trying to figure out what to do and what happened. And then she's like, well, we're going to take it a day at a time. Initially, when I was diagnosed, they didn't have any treatment. They didn't start me on growth hormone right away because they had stopped the growth hormone that they'd been using. And then eventually, through Texas Children's, I was put on a clinical trial, or not a clinical trial, but there was a group of TS girls that were put into this trial where it helped, where I was able to get my growth hormone at a much cheaper rate um, and provided for us. So I was basically part of a study so they can monitor how effective the growth hormone, this new growth hormone was, and how we were responding to it. So,
That's
and that's a
awesome.
different story in and of itself as that went on. Yeah.
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 Very, very cool. So the
Mm-hmm.
karyotype, were you classic or mosaic?
So the karyotype. So when I got diagnosed, they diagnosed me as mosaic.
Okay.
Um, and then I got myself re-tested when I set myself up with an endocrinologist here in Kansas City because I didn't have access to those records. And then what I did have, the karyotype wasn't in with my medical records. So I wanted to make sure that I had something official. And so my endocrinologist retested me, and that said classic.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So initially I thought that I was mosaic type, but then um, most likely I'm classic. So yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have been hearing more and more about, like, I don't know if you watched any of the videos that the Turner Syndrome Society put up on their channel on YouTube, but one of them talks about one of the doctors talks about how um, their colleague believes that every woman or girl that's alive with Turner syndrome has even just the slightest bit mosaic in order to have survived.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more science I'm seeing where, like, depending where they test or how they test, you could test
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah. And I think it's a matter of, I don't know if it's the cells that they capture at the time when they do the draw or whatever. But when I was at the last conference in Denver, there was a session where the doctor was actually talking about that. And I found it fascinating because she was talking about that same thing where, some of the girls may be diagnosed as classic, but at some level, we all have some level of mosaicism. And I don't know exactly, and I want to get more into behind that because I found that very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she was talking like some of us have different levels of mosaicism, but she's was saying that at some level we all have some mosaicism. And yeah, I
Yeah.
find that very interesting.
Yeah. Especially
Mm-hmm.
as somebody who's classic myself. And
Mm-hmm.
until we had karyotyping done, me and my mom were like, I've got to be mosaic. I
Yeah.
have I have such slight features of it. I've got to be mosaic. And then the test both times was very clear I was classic. And we're like, okay.
Yeah.
So that's, oh gosh, that's so interesting. I would
And I'm
love,
the same way because majority of my features really aren't typical of classic. So
yeah,
it's very slight. And so I was kind of surprised too. I was like, huh. So
that's
yeah.
so interesting. I love hearing all about that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you have gone to the conference how many times? I feel like quite a few.
I've been to 3.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What have your experiences at the conference been?
So my experiences have been really positive. So I went to my first one was the one in Dallas, and then I went to the one in Kansas City as in my own backyard. So how could I not?
Yeah.
Um, so I went to the one in Kansas City, and then I went to the one in Denver, um, and they all were really positive. They're now some of the breakout sessions, are great. But I love just getting a chance to see everyone, to see the girls, and be able to hang out, have fun. And I like that because it's just great to be with friends and girls that understand and
Yeah.
you can be yourself, and feel like it's a sisterhood. So
Yeah.
that's what I really love about it. But I have a medical nerd side of myself, and so there's some good sessions, and especially the one in Denver had some ones that were interesting. Now in Kansas City, there was some over the same like topics that I have been to like before and stuff that I know, but the social aspect really getting to see everybody is so much fun. And then they all, for me, had different different experiences. Like in Kansas City, I also had my crowning because I was doing pageants. I've taken a
Cool.
little pageants, but yes, I've done pageants too. Um, I break boards and wear a crown, um, and so I got crowned as Miss Kansas for the Regency International pageant system. I got crowned as Miss Kansas at the conference. They let me do it, and it was right around the time of the conference. So I was like, would I be able to have this done at the conference? And so I was able to with all the girls there, and I thought it'd be a great thing to just kind of a positive moment and encourage other girls to be able to, do something that they want to, chase after. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I was like, um, let me do my crowning at the Kansas City one. So that was one of my memories there. I would say probably the most impactful and life changing for me was the one in Dallas. That was my first one. And do you know Debbie Brown? Are you familiar with Debbie Brown and Leaping Butterfly Ministries?
I am. I have not talked with her a ton, but I am familiar with a lot of their ministry.
Okay. So she had written her first book, and um, at that time, I had just self published my book, and I, through Facebook, connected with Emily, who is good friends with Debbie and was helping her with her ministry. And she said, you should meet Debbie because she also wrote a book. So then she connected me to Debbie. Well, she sponsored me through Leaping Butterfly. She sponsored me to go to my first conference.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and Debbie had a daughter who um, had Turner syndrome that she found out she had TS when she was 9.
Okay.
Her daughter, and at I believe she was 28. I believe that's when she was. Yes, or slightly before she turned 28. She had a aortic dissection, and she wound up surviving, but unfortunately developed. And so, Debbie, I was learning all that, and I read her book, and she wanted to sponsor me because I'd never been to a conference at that point, and so she sponsored my way to the conference. And while I was at the conference, I had never, prior to that, even when I was younger, um, never had my heart checked ever. And every time my heart was listened to, it was always fine, always sounded great. EKGs always normal. The doctors never had any problems and never stepped in anything. And when I found out, I was kind of surprised that my endocrinologist, who specifically worked with TS patients, TS women, would have probably done more due diligence because he did everything else,
Mm-hmm.
but never checked my heart. Um, and then when I was in my 20s, I started developing high blood pressure, really high blood pressure. And I don't know that it's still related, but the high blood pressure, like nurses had been looking at me and were like, why are you, why is your blood pressure this high? Um, and they just, I mean, they didn't do anything other than that, but it should have bought me a ticket to um, at least an echocardiogram.
Yeah.
But it never did, and I didn't think to push for it at the time. I just trusted my endocrinologist. And so at this conference, though, they were doing the healthy heart studies, and Dr. Silverbach was starting these echocardiograms. So the girls could get at least free echocardiograms at the conference, which is huge, which is, I mean, immensely great. And
Yeah.
Debbie was helping as far as through Leaping Butterfly, helping support these like the cost of these echocardiograms.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yes, yes. And so while I was there, I thought, you know what? I'm going to just have one. I didn't really think anything of it. But I was like, you know what? It's a free echocardiogram, probably good just to have one and know.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought everything was going to be normal, fine, no problem. But I'm laying on the bed and I see that look that goes on the technician's face when they see something that they don't like and something's a problem. And they
Mm-hmm.
get that look, but they can't tell you.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the screen and I'm like, something's not right. But I knew enough something to know that something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. But she kept going over a certain spot. And she then said, I forget how strong you girls are. I was like,
Oh.
yeah, yeah, we are. And she was like, I'm going to need you to go out into the waiting room. And then uh, the doctors, I'm going to get one of the doctors to go out and talk to you.
Mm.
I, at that point, started freaking out
Yeah.
because I knew what that was going to mean. And I was like, what is going on? And I was like, holy cow. I was like, something's not right. I thought she was just like, I'm like, yeah, I mean, familiar with like, yeah, we all, I mean, she's seen, you know, done these echocardiograms. So
Mm.
she's seen girls with, complex issues and stuff. So she went and got the pediatric cardiologist that was working with Dr. Silverbach. I could hear them talking in the room. And I couldn't quite make out what they were saying, but I knew they were talking. And then she went and got Dr. Silverbach. And Dr. Silverbach came out and told me, and that's when he told me that they found a coarctation in my descending aorta.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, gone all this time and never known that. And I was just like, I had just met Debbie, just heard the story of her daughter, and thinking, wow, what if I had had a dissection, had no clue? And I'm single, I'm living on my own. I'm like, I could have been in my apartment and just been doing something and then had a dissection, And
Yeah.
I like could have, I mean, I had never known. And even today, if that had not happened, I probably wouldn't know
Yeah. Yeah. Because
because I had no
like,
real symptoms,
yeah.
um, which is the crazy thing. And so that was huge. So that was life changing for me. At that time, it felt like an anvil dropped on my head. I was like, "What is going on?" Because I had no idea how bad it was, and um, but thankfully, I was telling myself, I'm like, okay, if Dr. Silverbach lets me leave and head back to Kansas City, things are okay. It's not that bad because Dr. Silverbach, if it was emergent, he was going to tell me to go to the nearest hospital.
Mhm.
Um, so he didn't tell me that. So I was like, okay. So I had to come back and I had to start looking for a cardiologist and doing more follow up to figure out what needed to happen. And so I came back and I had a full cardiac MRI. And then I found a good cardiologist through KU because I was like, if I'm gonna have to have heart surgery and trust somebody to that, I'm gonna find a really good thoracic surgeon. So um, we have fortunately through KU here, we have a great cardiac program. So I have a good cardiologist, but thankfully, because initially when I had my scans, they were saying that because they found out not only do I have the coarctation, that's when I found out I also have slightly enlarged right subclavian artery,
Okay.
pushing slightly on my esophagus. Um, so he finally examined like through the I mean he examined the dimensions and everything like that. And fortunately for me, it's a very my coarctation, the enlargement, I think that's above it is very slight. Like it's like less than even two. It's like 1.5 centimeters or something like that. It's
Okay.
very yeah, it's
Yeah.
very slight. So he doesn't even have to do any medical intervention at this point. So, and then if anything needs to be done, he's thinking I could probably get by with having a stent. But right now he's saying like blood flow and everything looks good. And he thinks that now as an adult, there's not going to be any change. Like I'm not growing or anything like that. So he doesn't think that there's going to be any changes as long as I can keep my blood pressure and stuff under control. But I mean, that was huge to find out. Like, but I mean, it's amazing how all of that worked out. And, I felt a little bit of survivor's guilt thinking about Debbie's daughter and what she went through.
Yeah.
And that Debbie was the one that helped me find this out. Because, like, if it weren't for her, yeah, to this day, I would not know.
Yeah. So first, I think it cut out when you were finishing the story about her daughter. So you
Mm-hmm.
said she survived the dissection,
Yes. Yeah.
but there was other complications after.
Yes. So she developed after the surgery. She developed a staph infection. It turned out, and
Oh,
so she had to go back into the hospital because where the surgery was, it was like all in through her chest, I believe.
okay.
And so they had to go in and try and get it taken care of. And she was finally at the point where I think the next day they they were going to clear her to go home. Like
Okay.
she had to be in the hospital for months while they tried to get try to get the infection cleared out. And so she was uh, yeah, about ready to be discharged and finally. And yeah, she was sitting up in bed, um, and a blood clot hit her lungs.
Oh, wow.
And it was like instant. They tried to work on her, um, but yeah, they couldn't bring her back. So because it was pretty instantaneous. Yeah, yeah,
That's so
yeah.
scary. I think the biggest lesson, because I've heard you tell your story of, everything had looked fine until you went to the conference and just thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'll just get another checkup while I'm
Mm-hmm.
here. Why not? And
Yeah.
then you find that out. And it just, for me, it really hit home with symptoms or not, get checked out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
And
that's what's
not to
scary.
idle with, well, everything's been fine up to this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you never know. And that's why I try and encourage girls to get the cardiac. I mean, trust me, they're not cheap at all. They're not.
No.
I just got done with mine. Um, and no, they are not cheap, even with insurance.
Mhm.
But I think even if you can take advantage of even the echocardiogram at conference where that's being paid for,
Yeah.
that opportunity. You know, I think it's always good to at least have some awareness and some um, level as to your, you know, to what your baselines are, because
Yeah.
you never know. You never know. Um, and we recently started a clinic for adult TS women, which I'm hoping that more of those become available throughout the states. So we have access because it's so hard to find doctors. And like, you know, I had a regular, you know, um, and you know, just a regular care doctor, family practice doctor, right? And um, would not have caught any of it. I mean, that's who I like when I was a kid. I had an endocrinologist who specialized in TS, and then what happens, I think, for us as adults is we become adults, we take on our own care, and then it's like, great, good luck. You know, like I didn't have any like specialists. I didn't know anyone that was familiar with TS. Like I even like I went to a family doctor when I got back from college. I was trying to get a doctor back here in Kansas City, and she didn't even want to prescribe the hormones that I take.
Wow. That's
Yeah. She didn't even feel comfortable with that. But in the long run, I'm thankful that she did that because I was like, okay, fine. I will find another doctor. But I also found an endocrinologist here that's really great that works with adult and girls who are with TF.
oh,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah. So thankfully, her doing that, I was like, okay, great. So I
Yeah.
found another primary care, and then I found my endocrinologist, Dr. Midyat. But I would not. I mean, like none of them thought they'd be like, oh, well, your blood pressure is high. Wonder why.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I can only I try and be like, hey, this is what I know. This is what I've dealt with. These are things I don't have. But I'm like, you know, y'all need to let me know if you're saying things. And
Yeah.
I should have questioned that more. But I always thought because I trusted my endocrinologist as a kid, I was like, I assumed that he probably knew enough to know that I was fine. So I didn't think I had anything going on as far as cardiac. And I thought I was fortunate in that regard. And in a way I still am, but I'm like, now as an adult, I mean like I was just like I was by myself because the other girls were in a meeting and I'm like, I'm not around my family and I'm by myself and I'm finding out that I have a genetic heart condition. And like,
Yeah.
wow. So, you know, but I just I think it's really important. But thankfully now I do have a doctor, but I'm like we have to do a lot of our own self advocating. But I think the clinics help. So then you can have different specialties and have the cardiac specialty and you know, at least every few years. Like if nothing's wrong, like, go another, 5 years and then get checked. But I
Yeah.
mean, it can change in an instant. And her story is one of those moments too.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. So, how frequently are you getting EKGs or cardiac MRIs right now?
um, once a year. So actually, this year it had been once a year. So actually, this year, um, my doctor told me that as long as everything looks good, um, he thinks I can go every 2 years. Which
Oh, that's
thank
awesome.
goodness, yes, because paying for one of those bad boys every year is
Yeah.
a little pricey, but Yeah, so I was able to, I'm able to now go 2 years, thankfully.
And what's the name of the Turner Syndrome Clinic in Kansas City?
So we have a pediatric one, which is the Great Heights, and then the adult one. I don't know if they have an official name. It's just the KU Adult Women's Turner Syndrome Clinic, because it's we do it through KU, because because my cardiologist, he's the basically he's the one that's uh, in charge, or one of the ones in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So he does all the cardiac work, but he's really the sponsor, at least on as far as the doctors. And then we have two primary care doctors that work along with him, and they do more of the primary care. And they're there that if we want to go through them for medication and things like that, if they want us to want them to handle our prescriptions or whatever, that they're there for that. Because some of the girls don't have a primary care to do that. I do, but they're great and they're learning. They've done clinics for she one of the main primary care doctors did a clinic for Downs patients, so she knows the
Oh, cool.
format. Yeah, but she's not as familiar with Turner syndrome, so she's learning a lot. But she's really cool. We have audiology, so we have an audiology team. And then hopefully we'll be able to get like
That's awesome.
another doctor on board as well. But yeah, so we can get like the DECA scans and all of that in at one time now.
That's
So
awesome.
we can take one day off work and get whatever scans and stuff done that we need.
Yeah,
So
all of the screenings just
yes,
it's very
yeah,
cumbersome, but I
yeah,
always feel better after I finish them because I'm like, yes, I'm
yeah,
good. I know what's going on and that's done. And
exactly,
oh
exactly.
gosh, it
Yeah,
is it is quite the feeling going through all of them because especially I don't know about for you, but the cardiac MRI, not only is it not a cheap thing, but it's an intense process.
yeah,
It
yeah.
can be like a whole experience going through that one. It's so much more intense than an echo or the blood work.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I don't know who's had one and who's not, but I remember the first one that I got with him. And they put me through the MRI machine. I did okay at first, but it's like being squeezed through a tube of toothpaste. It's just, it is so claustrophobic.
Mhm.
But fortunately, I was able to listen to music. But it's intense, and you're laying there and you have to listen for their breathing commands, and it's a whole thing. And you have to, like, I mean, they do it with contrast, so it's like, you have to go through that. And so they had to do a whole bunch of images, and then they put in the contrast, and then do images with contrast, and it was like 45 minutes of being in there. And the noise those machines make
It's awful.
are awesome. This year, though, I fortunately was able to do it more echocardiogram style. They just had me lay on the table, so I didn't have to go through the machine. I just got to lay on the table, and they did it basically an echocardiogram essentially, and then put it in dye. So
That's cool.
so much better, so
Yeah,
much better. Yes. So I'm
I know.
hoping that he'll keep doing that, because I mean, it is super intense.
Yeah,
So
I've
intense.
had, I think total, I've had three done. I had one when I was 21. And then I had one when we started seeing a reproductive endocrinologist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had another one to update that one. The first two were done with contrast, and the last one was not. And oh man, it was. I never had an MRI for anything before that. I should
Yeah,
have for my knee, but that's a whole other story. But it was, gosh,
they
and I
are
think
intense. They are.
they're intense. And if you're
Mhm.
like, I'm pretty claustrophobic. If you're more claustrophobic than me, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine.
Yeah. Fortunately, I mean, I'm a little claustrophobic, but yeah, I'm like, if I had been any more claustrophobic, I would have probably had to be like, you have to get me out of here. I'm like, you're gonna have to get me out of this thing, because I remember I was laying there and I was doing good, and then she came in to check because she was about to put in the contract, and I asked her, okay, how much longer? And I already felt like I'd been in there forever. And she goes, it's maybe 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, okay. But I was started thinking about that and I just wanted to cry. I
Yeah.
started like, I'm like, okay, I can't cry. That's not going to help me because it's going to make things worse. I'm
Yeah.
like, don't cry, Andrea. But I was about to go into a slight panic attack because I'm like, I just need to get out.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, hang in there just a little bit longer. But yeah, I was like, I didn't know if I could do that again this year. I was like, I talked to Dr. Midya. I was like, for Mulhern, and I was like, I don't know if I can do that. But fortunately, he was like, yeah, if we can do it with Di, then we'll do the echocardiogram.
Yeah.
Like,
I
okay,
know
that works.
the echoes have never been an issue for me. Like,
Yeah,
it honestly was really fun hearing my heartbeat.
it is kind of cool. I do have to say that is kind of cool.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was the MRI is that it's so intense and it feels really intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pressure
Yeah.
of like, okay, I have to make sure I listen to the commands and follow them properly. And like
Yeah.
that can feel intimidating. And then you're like, I don't want to screw this up and have to be in here any longer than I need to.
I know. I know. Right. I'm like, I'm hoping that they're getting everything that they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I am a major advocate of you need to be a self advocate because
yeah. Yeah.
everybody's so different and not all doctors have the same experience. And
Mm-mm.
I mean, I had on a much smaller scale my my endo that I had when I first moved and had to get a new endo actually ignore that my stomach was hurting when I took my HRT and just brushed it off like it was in my head.
Oh,
And I'm like, come to find out, my liver levels were through the roof.
ah,
And
yeah.
that was why I talked to my OB and or my yeah, she was an OBGYN, but obviously
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing her for gynecology. Um and she looked it up and she goes, "Oh yeah, this is way higher of estrogen than you need." And that's like one of the first things is it'll hurt your stomach if it's too much. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
why did somebody that's supposed to be working with girls with Turner syndrome using this stuff not have that red flag for them then?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I really I wish that I mean because that's something that I want to do and find a way to help get more education into the medical community
Yeah,
because even I mean even doctors who have some familiarity with Turner syndrome just short, sort of brush that stuff under the rug a
mhm,
little bit. It's like, no,
yeah.
yeah,
You can't
not good.
ignore
Yeah,
how your body is feeling and what your
mhm,
body is trying to tell you.
yeah, yeah. Like if I'm telling you something's not right, like
Something's not right.
please listen to me. Yeah,
Yeah,
something's not right.
yeah.
Don't just act like
You're fine.
you're fine. Yeah.
Meanwhile, who knows what could be happening that you're not addressing and how much longer it's going to continue because of that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are the echoes happening at every conference now? Is that every year they do that?
I think every other conference,
Okay.
I think is what they're doing. Yeah. If I understand correctly. The last conference that I was at Denver. So it's been now a couple of years. So um I hopefully we'll go to a conference next year, but they canceled it obviously
Yeah.
this year, which is sad. But I was planning on going to Scotland
Oh,
to the
cool.
conference, the international conference in Scotland,
When is that,
um,
or was that scheduled for?
in July, mid
Okay.
July. Yes. And so they haven't officially canceled it yet, but it's sort of now we're in a holding pattern of
Yeah.
we'll find out more beginning of March as far as that goes. But yes, there's me and two other girls. I think maybe one other. So me and three other girls, but myself and one of the girls were flying together. So me and my friend Amanda were flying together.
Okay.
Um, and then we're gonna meet up with the other girls once we get there.
Very
But
cool.
I think there's gonna be 3 to 4 of us here from Kansas City that will be there if we can still go.
Yeah.
But
Well, when
yeah,
they canceled the states conference, did all of that get shifted to online, or is it just done completely?
I think it's done completely unless they decide to try and do something online.
Okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember if there had been anything said about possibly having some of the sessions still happen over the internet.
yeah, I have to look at that because I think that would be a good opportunity. Then I mean, you can't be there, but at least it's something where people can still kind of be a part.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, you have technology, why not? So
Yeah, exactly. And there's
mhm,
so many things that are now being shifted to online. It's a
yeah,
great opportunity to add that to the list and
yeah,
make it
yeah,
even more available to people who wouldn't have been able to fly there if it hadn't been.
right, yeah. Um, so I hope that they do that. I'm gonna have to try and keep tabs on what they put out, and if they're gonna do that, I think that would be a good opportunity. So,
Yeah.
yeah, who knows? Because even more might be able to join in and be a part of that that wouldn't have been able to fly out there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So is is the heart issues the thing that you feel like has affected you the most with Turner syndrome?
Um, I would say in the last few years, um, it's been one of them. Um, I'm gonna be honest where I say like, I deal with a little bit of survivor's guilt at times because, we've lost some of the girls in the TS community that have had um, complications from, different heart related issues
Yeah.
that have passed. And so I can't say that it doesn't hit me at times. And, I mean, it's scary whether you're single or not, but I can't say that it doesn't at times kind of shake me a little bit when I think about, and right now I don't worry, but I start thinking about too. I'm like, well, what if I'm single when I'm older, you know, and something happens? Or even just being by myself, I'm like, how is somebody going to know if something does happen? How
Yeah.
long is it going to take for them to find me? I mean, am I even going to be able to have a chance to at least, dial 911? Because I mean, especially if it's a dissection that's happening, I mean, I may or may not be able to do that for myself. And so it's scary to think about how my, I mean, like obviously if like something emergent's happening, I may not even be able to drive at that moment. So I can't just drive myself to a hospital. What if I can't dial 911 and try and get help? Um, or have a friend come and take me. Um, so those are things that I think about being single and living on my own. I'm like, what if something like that happens?
Yeah.
Knowing that, you know, um, right now there's a slight, but I mean, it's a very slight potential because I'm doing good, but you know, that can change at any point in time. And so it does at points hit me, and especially when there's something going on, cardiac related with one of the girls. And I feel very fortunate that, um, I haven't been in an emergent situation. I feel very fortunate that I was able to find out before that even happened. But it's still scary to think about. I'm like, what if I'm just, here alone in my apartment and something happens? Like,
Yeah.
how do I advocate for myself even? Like, if I can't communicate, like, who's going to advocate for me? That's the other thing I think about. I'm like, do I have somebody that can, if I'm in a situation where I'm not going to be able to advocate for myself, do they know enough to be able to help me advocate for me?
Yeah, like
And
know what you want people to do.
hmm
Yeah.
so I'm thinking about stuff to do. I put notes in my phone too, of, like, hey, this is the doctor to take me to. This is where I want you to take me to. Stuff like that. And then, there's a few people that I'm going to communicate, like things like that too.
Yeah.
But still, if I can't call or something, it's going to be difficult. But at least somebody finds me. Hopefully, they check my phone, and see that information in there. But I've tried to communicate with some friends. I'm like, if somebody calls you, um, this is what you need to tell them. This is where I need to go. You know, please make sure. That kind of stuff. But it's it's a little intimidating, a little scary. So that is a factor. But I will say one of the things that has been difficult on an emotional level, besides the cardiac stuff, and even more than the cardiac stuff, is the infertility issue.
Yeah.
Um, because um, so I'm gonna be honest here. Like, I don't know if you've heard of CR, but I go to a Christian group that's called Celebrate Recovery.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
okay, and one of the things I've been trying to work through is because I have a lot of anger that I have not dealt with, um, when it comes to the infertility issue. Because um, there's a little bit of anger that I have towards being single at
Hmm.
this point. Um, and not only still being single and having to, like, I feel like sometimes, great, I gotta be single and deal with this on my own. I don't have a partner with me to help me and just, kind of walk through this stuff with. I have to take on this on my own.
Hmm.
And I mean, not that I don't have friends and stuff like that, but I'm like, it's kind of different than when you have, a friend and spouse and your partner going through it with you.
Yeah.
And I don't have that. I mean, I have great friends and people around me, but at the same time, when you come home at the end of the day and you just, want someone that you can trust and cry or whatever, I don't have that.
Yeah.
So, um, it's hard to get some of that like off because I don't have somebody to talk about some of those feelings with and stuff. And, it does leave me sometimes frustrated. Like, I would like to, have a family. I would like to be able to be married. And I have since I was 5. And my mom talked to me about the possibility that I wouldn't be able to have kids. So my mom was pregnant with my brother, and I was starting to ask questions. I was 5 years old, and at the time, I saw my mom pregnant, and I was looking at her belly, and I was like, "So you mean I won't have to look like that?" And that's the thing that I share in my book. But really, that's how I thought about it as a kid. I was like, "Oh, good, I can." I'm like, that sounds great, and I can just adopt, and I don't have to have the pain of childbirth because I don't have a high pain tolerance anyway. So I'm good there. I don't like. I'm like, I can adopt a kid. That sounds great for me. And I always felt like God put that on my heart. And I always felt like that was going to be what God wanted for me, is to adopt a child. And, um, I have been working to try and put myself in a place that even as a single parent, which is going to make it even more difficult. I'm like, do I pursue adoption as a single parent on my own, or do I wait? And I'm like, I keep waiting, thinking I'm going to marry and we can adopt together. And my husband's probably still lost looking for direction. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so it's been emotional. I'm like, I mean, because trying to do it single, um, I'm like, am I ready for that challenge? Because it's just a challenge just to deal with like my own
Hmm.
stuff. So I'm like, would it be fair? Because I want to, I want to provide the best environment and have it be, fair, and be able to give my best to a child that I would bring in. Um, and so I'm weighing that, in deciding what I'm going to do. But I always hope that I'd be married and then we could adopt. But I don't know if that's going to happen. So it's a lot of praying and deciding what the right thing would be to do, because now sort of the time for me to do that if I'm going to do it. But um,
And just as a little bit of encouragement to you, I know there are a lot of girls that I've talked to that they have that same experience
mm-hmm.
of being frustrated with being single and feeling the struggle of that. And I felt that struggle before I was not in that situation anymore. I very much was like, I'm never gonna be, this is awful. And I was very much in that struggle. And I know how hard that can be. And I know
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of other ladies that deal with that same struggle. And I just talked to Amy from Life of Amy Turner Syndrome.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And she adopted as a single mom 2 kids through foster care.
Wow. Yeah, we have
So that was an incredible story to hear.
yeah. We have one of the ladies, in our group here. She recently now, she has a good relationship with her mom, and her mom's around to help a lot. But one of the girls here locally, she also adopted, and she adopted 3 kids as a single mom.
Oh,
I
wow.
was like, bless you for doing that. I'm like, that is a huge responsibility. I'm like, wow. I'm like, you go. But yeah, she adopted 3 kids at one time as a single parent. I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
So
that would be
like,
going from 0 to 3.
yes,
That would be a lot.
yes, yes. So so I was so happy and excited for her. And stuff like that does encourage me. Um my parents, so they live in Texas. So they're a little bit further away. I'd love for them to be around because I mean I would have to work. And that's the biggest challenge is trying to balance um their needs and then also being able to work so I can provide because I would have to work still.
Yeah.
And I want my kids, like if I adopt, I want them to be homeschooled. So those are options too that I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, how do I get them homeschooled and stuff? But
Yeah.
yeah, well, I have to work. So
Yeah.
a lot to think through. But yeah, that's definitely, I mean, it's been emotional just trying to work through some of that. So it's not as much of a burden. But yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's a very emotional thing, I think, for a lot of us women, um,
Yeah. And
going through it.
I think going through everything for us with foster care has just really taught me this is going to be something I'm processing
Mm-hmm.
probably till the day I die.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just always going to be something I'm working through, grieving and the emotions of, and I
yeah,
don't know that that's ever going to go away,
yeah, yeah,
which sounds like a bit of a downer, but it's just a little bit of, it freed me to like, okay, I don't have to instantly be okay. I
mm-hmm.
am allowed to feel however I'm feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's sort of what I had to tell myself too, with all that. I'm like, I have to let myself be okay to feel this and deal with it. And
Yeah.
for so long, I just kind of tried to ignore that. And it's definitely been hard because it's like when I was younger, it was a lot easier for me to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
because I had like, oh, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna have kids, I'm gonna meet husband, a good man who's gonna want to adopt, of course, and then reality happens and I'm like, yeah, that's not happening quite that way. I mean,
Yeah,
who
and
knows when that's gonna happen, right? So,
the
um,
anticipation of
but
telling
I'm like, I had to readjust. Huh?
the anticipation of having that whole conversation of telling them your
Yeah. And then
situation.
there's that too. It's like when I do meet somebody every day, I'm like, when do I bring this into the conversation?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was so scared.
I
So
can
scared.
just imagine. Yeah.
That was, and then we got through that, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I feel like if we got through that part, we can probably get through the rest of it.
Yeah. 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 That's gonna, I mean, to me, that's gonna be a big thing. I'm like, okay, like if can get through that, then I think we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
I'm trusting, God knows that, and meet somebody that will have the ability to understand. I'm
yeah,
like, if he, if he's the right guy to, move forward with, then I think he'll understand. So,
exactly. Yeah. I know I've had girls ask me too, um, how do I find somebody that does understand? And it's like
mhm.
that's not really something you can plan.
No,
You
no,
you kind of just have to figure out for yourself when the right time for you is to share it with them in your
yeah,
relationship, and how at what point you feel comfortable opening up like that, because it is really intimidating and scary. You feel so vulnerable doing that.
yeah,
But the hard truth is, if they're not going to be understanding, then
yeah,
you're not who you're meant to go through life with, because
yeah,
the person you go through life with has to be willing to go through those things with you.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely, not dating is hard, and then when you
Mhm.
add that into the mix, it just really complicates things, and it's definitely not been easy.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think about that anytime I potentially meet somebody. I'm like, how am I going to tell? Because um, I never want to feel like I'm gonna mislead somebody and then just be like, oh hey, guess what? Now that
Yeah. Now
now
that we're comfortable with each other, here's
yeah,
this little fun tidbit
yeah,
to deal with.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, it's not one of those things that I just want to be like right away. Hey, guess what? But
Yeah.
to me, it will tell a lot about who they are, and if it's something that they're not okay with, then I'm like, I have to be okay with, like, that's fine. You don't have to be okay with it, but I know that you're not the person for me because
Yeah.
this is my reality and I need someone that's gonna be able to walk through that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's hard to navigate, because
yeah,
emotionally
yeah,
that can be so tough. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
it's tough on both sides of it. It's tough for us, and it's tough for the guy
yeah,
we're feeling.
yeah, yeah. I
So,
mean, and I try and understand that because I'm like, I know what essentially I'm telling you. And it's like I hate to have to do that. I'm like, that's the last thing I want to do because it's hard for me to even say it for myself.
yeah.
And like, you know, um, it hurts. I mean, it's a reality that hurts and you have to be able to grieve it. And I'm like, it's not gonna be any easier.
Yeah.
Um, you know, telling, you know, this guy that I'm looking at marrying or that I care about and yeah, it's a hard conversation to have. And I think it's one of the hardest things that I think we as TS women have to go through is dealing with that and navigating that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
On top of everything else.
yeah, oh yeah. On top of everything else, like there wasn't enough. I was like,
that list that pops up on
Yeah.
Google or
Mm-hmm.
Mayo Clinic of all of the things you kind of have all of those emotional struggles tapped into one thing, and it's like, oh no, they've
Yeah.
got a bunch of branches off of that
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
I know. I know. Like that's just like barely scratching like the
Yeah,
surface. Like
yeah. So the kind of last thing that I've
yeah.
been asking everybody is the theme for this year's awareness month
Uh-huh.
was be uniquely you.
Right.
So what does that mean to you?
Um, so be uniquely you. To me, that means really not being, I mean, don't be afraid to be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I think um, I still struggle with it. But just being confident in who you are. And as a Christian, I believe, God created us all to be, unique and fearfully and wonderfully made. And when you think about the butterfly, each one is different. The color from their colors, and all of them are just so vastly different. Um, and we share so much in common, but each of us just bring something different. And when you bring it together, as a community, it's amazing, and it's beautiful, and it's special, and it's important. And I think it's just important to embrace who you are, and know that you're okay. Um, with you know I mean, with the imperfections and perfections. Like, God makes no mistakes. As me as a Christian, I'm just saying that. I believe God makes no mistakes. And
Amen.
so, yes. And so we all, I mean, we all bring something different to the table. We all have a little something that we bring to the table. And then I think when you put it together, it's just such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to be able to embrace that. I think, sometimes I think we're afraid to a little bit, because we deal with so much of the um, struggles that come with having Turner syndrome. But, we're also, beautiful, and we're also valued. Um, and so not being afraid to embrace that, and be like, what, I am who I am.
Mhm.
And it took me a long time to be okay, and I still have those days where I struggle. But I mean, like, one of the things that was a profound moment for me is when my mom talked to me about the idea of having leg lengthening surgery.
Mm.
I'm
Wow.
like, yeah. Um, and when I was younger and I was still growing, I mean, my mom brought this up because she wanted me to have that option.
Hmm.
And but when I started thinking about that, I was like, why would I go through all of that to be like everybody else? I
Yeah.
was meant to stand out. I was I was meant to be who I was, and I was meant to be different, and that doesn't have to be bad,
No, not at all.
you know. And so why would I, in order to try and be, similar to everybody else, and go through all that just to do that? I mean, it's one thing for me, like, if I thought about it and it would have some medical benefit for me, and
Hmm.
it could give me, I mean, a few more inches, sure, that could make things more convenient for me. But I'm like, I was made to be who I was.
Yeah.
And if I go through all this, that changes that. Why
Hmm.
would I want to do that? I'm doing just fine. I was learning to drive. I'm like, I know I can drive. I know I can get around. I know I can do all this stuff. I
Yeah.
can do things. I do Taekwondo. I'm about to test for a black belt.
That's
You
so
know,
cool.
um, and I did, I that's one of the reasons why I did the pageant too. Tie back into that. I'm like, I wanted to show girls that they were. It's not about necessarily just outward beauty, but it's being able to shine in the way that you were meant to shine.
Hmm. Yeah.
and we all should embrace our own uniqueness. So that's what I think of.
I love that. And I was thinking when you were telling your story about, your mom took the time right after finding out to kind of process that for herself
Mm-hmm.
and grieve. And then she went straight into giving you the encouragement to advocate for yourself, to be stronger than the doctors maybe were expecting you to, and, push you to be all you could be. And I absolutely loved that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not in that you need to do more than you're able to, but don't be afraid to be strong and try. And I love that. So I absolutely adored that story. I'm like, yes, I love your mom. Oh my
My
gosh,
mom
that's
is really
awesome.
cool. Actually, yeah, she is quite she's quite the personality. So yeah, if you get to see my full personality on display, wait until you see my mom. I mean she is fun. She really is. So she's pretty cool. I was fortunate to have her to raise me, but yeah, she's a lot of fun. So
So,
you'll see where I get my spunk from.
yeah, that's, I love that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I will link the Facebook page and your book and everything in the comment or in the description box. Do you have anything you wanted to add?
Um, well, just to say, I am glad that we had this moment to get to chat and share this stuff, and I really hope that everyone that is going to see this and listen, that hopefully it's encouraging, and yeah, I really appreciate the support and getting to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much for talking to me. I was so excited to find a time to
yeah,
be able to talk with you.
yeah,
So, yeah, thank you again, and I
yeah.
will hopefully talk to you soon.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.